So welcome to the Node.js Technical Steering Committee meeting for August 23rd, 2023. We'll follow our standard approach of going through the issues that were tagged for the agenda. That issue was it was issue number 1428 in the TSC repo. Before we get started, does anybody have any announcements they'd like to share? I think the one which I should probably mention at this point was there is an issue open for the election of our CPC representatives as an impact project. Those votes were discussed as part of the CPC meeting. There is an issue in the agenda, tagged for the agenda, that's number 819, where there's some discussion going on there. So if people can jump in, if you're interested in running for that position, please, volunteer. I think we need to close on that in the next week or so. But so mostly as a FYI to anybody who'd be interested and sort of jump in the discussion there. Since we have no other announcements, there are two things I thought we should try and do quickly. The first one was Chinzong's opened a request for travel to represent the Node project for TC39. Do you want to just give a brief intro to that, Chinzong?
Yeah, I'm currently working as a champion of the TC39 async context proposal. It provides a language feature similar to node.js async log storage, but with the proposal, we can build the feature into the ECMAScript so that it will be available on the web platforms too. So this time, I'm going to present the stage 2 updates of the proposal. And unfortunately, I didn't get a chair fund from my employer, so I'm requesting the chair fund from the OpenJS Foundation. However, it is requested that if we are requesting chair fund from OpenJS Foundation to a standard body, it is required to representing one of the project in OpenJS. So I'm asking for endorsement from the JSC to represent the Node.js project to T39 to present these updates.
So yeah, I think the ask is there's some discussion in that issue, and a few people have sort of plus one that. The question is for everybody here, are people comfortable, basically saying the TSC has consensus, or the people who are here have consensus to plus one that the TSC is asking that we get Chinzong there. I think the reason it's needed this time is there is some concern that there's a lot of use of the travel fund, and so prioritization, et cetera, may occur. I certainly think from our perspective, it's important to have Node represented in those discussions. So maybe would it be possible for people to plus one in the chat, TSC members that would support that, so we can say, we got this many plus ones in the chat from the TSC members. We'll just give people a few minutes to do that. Okay. Again, if you can add your +1 while we're chatting, that would be good. Otherwise, I'm going to move on to the next discussion. So the next one was Claudio here's to give us an update on some work related to a new design for the website. So I'll let you launch into that.
Thank you, Michael. So yeah, I would like to introduce first a few. First, I'm Claudia from the website team. I guess some of you are here already know me, and as some of you might know, but to give a little bit of context, this last year we've been working a lot for improving the infrastructure behind the website, and these last few months, we've been working together with the foundation and with a third-party designer to come with a new design for the Node.js website. And today I would like to present pretty much what are the final designs. Final in the sense that what we agreed with the foundation so far, but I'm here to also get as much as feedback as possible, if there's any, of course, from the TSC, and to also explain design decisions and etc. if they make sense or not. And then, pretty much one of the outcomes of this would be either, we have feedbacks and things that we want to have addressed, or we are fine with the design I'm going to present today and we can proceed with it. And what it means that by proceeding with it means that, we can start into implementing the new design into the website, on the living website that we have. Also, besides of the designs that I'm going to share today, on Figma, there's an issue on Node.js admin where you can keep track of that. I think it's mentioned on this meeting's agenda issue also. And it also links to, it showed, if not, but it links to the discussions that are also happening within the website repository. So without further ado, or if anyone has a question before I start, please mention. I guess not. Can everybody see my screen? Hopefully. Or a better question, can someone not see my screen? Cool. Okay, so before I start going through the pages, it's important to mention that in some of those pages that you're going to see, there are variations. And also this is not content fidel, which means that the content that you see here is either a mock or just a visual representation of how it should look like. But the actual content of the website and the actual options, download options, and other things that you will see will actually be based on what we actually have. So these are pretty much just a design perspective, a design system, but not actually what, the content proof, So starting with the homepage, you will see that, this is pretty much the new look and feel of the homepage of the website, where you have it's separated, by header, the main content, footer, with the content on the main website. We are focusing now on showing easy ways for people to get started with Node.js on the right, and a few call to actions on the left on how to go learn more about Node.js or other options, download options for Node.js. Want to mention that there's always a dark version of this layout, and also on the home layout, there's also in spec few banner designs or announcements or important security, for example, announcements. So, for example, we're incorporating PO design for example, new released versions or new security versions or etc., or banner-based designs for something that is very important or that people should probably, call more the action of people, right? So you have a more subtle banner and, a global banner that is shown on all pages. Yes, pretty much this is the main design of the homepage, and this is how it would look on mobile. I will also go through, for example, the menu part, for example, what will actually happen if you click on the menu, and also, for example, how the search bar actually renders and etc. But so far, I just want to focus on the homepage now. I want to ask if anyone has already so far question regarding design of the homepage. Okay.
Yeah, my only concern, which maybe we'll talk later on, is like that the downloads are just as easy to get at as they are before, but it doesn't affect the overall approach or anything.
Mm-hmm. Then one of the main changes in terms of content that we're going to have on the website is that we're moving away from the outdated guides to a new learn section, which is pretty much the content that we updated and created over the last few years in Node.js or Dev. So the new learn section will also only cover very basic stuff about Node.js, because we want to avoid the issue of maintaining way too much content, that content becoming outdated, right? But it will have some essential things about Node.js, and for people to get started and to understand the basics of how Node.js works, in comparison to other programming languages, JavaScript runtimes, and also other, for example, non-JavaScript runtimes. For example, people are used to do, asynchronous work in a certain way, but Node.js doesn't this way, which is, for example, here. As you can see on the Learn layout, you have on the left the main navigation of the content, where you are at and what are the other modules. On the right, you have some metadata. In the middle, you have the main content. On the footer, you have pretty much kind of breadcrumb design, which is where you are at on the website. This is the dark design for the Learn section. And this is the mobile design. Keep in mind that this mobile design is based on the smallest mobile screen you could actually get. Actual mobile screens will be usually 25, 30 to 40% bigger than this. But we want to show how it will look like in the smallest of the screens. So far, any question regarding the design of the Learn page or the migration over guides towards the Learn page itself? Some of you might not, be aware of that discussion has been happening, or yeah. Yeah, Tobias?
Hey, Claudia, I believe you recently clarified that the website team is not responsible for the actual contents of the website. So
Correct.
what team would be responsible for reviewing and potentially writing these contents?
That is very good. Actually, all those pages are already Node.js or Dev and were done initially by the website redesign initiative, which was before my time. And then recently we had Rich and other people to give a look and remove, we audited the current guides and also the new Learn pages from Node.js or Dev, and removed all the things that a bunch of people commented and were like, yeah, this doesn't make sense, etc. Future-wise, when this actually incorporates in the node.js.org website, the idea is that, for example, collaborators, core collaborators own the content. So pretty much, for example, if someone from the security team wants to add a basic learn page about basic security knowledge that you should know about Node.js, or releasers want to add a learn page which is about understanding the Node.js, release timeline, they will be the owners for that content, and we will have pretty much no say. But a short answer, any core collaborator, they would own the content. We could, of course, kind of create code owners for specific sections, but I guess it can be discussed afterwards. What do you think about that?
Yeah, sounds good. Nothing to add. Thank you.
Yeah, cool. Any other question? Okay. Then we go to the about pages. The about pages are pretty much the same as you see on Node.js.org right now. There will be one-to-one match because content-wise, nothing needs to be different so far as far as we know. But there's always opportunity updating that content. But pretty much the layout is very similar to what you see on the learn pages, by the difference that the left navigation has a different layout, because different from learn that you have like a progression from going to one content to another. On about pages, you pretty much just go where you want. It's a more free navigation. But it has the same design resemblance of, the learn page. You have on the right the metadata, in the middle the main content, and in the left the navigation. And it looks like this on dark. And it looks pretty much very similar to what you see also on the learn pages on mobile. Any question regarding the layout of the about pages? I think all the pages, this is the most straightforward one, but
what's reading mode? I couldn't see an obvious difference as you were scrolling past the. So below this, there's like screenshots that look very similar.
You saw something called reading mode somewhere.
No, reading time.
Oh, reading time. Yeah. So this is calculated based on how many characters you have in the article or in the page. So it's pretty much a very rough estimate. It's not really precise, because people read things in different speeds. But how much you would take usually to read this? It's not.
So it's the same design. It's just got extra metadata or something added to the column. I was just trying to spot as you were scrolling past what the difference between the two screenshots were. That's all.
Which screenshot?
That one and the one below it.
Oh,
because
on reading mode, I see now what you're
light
saying.
And dark, but I was trying to work out what was different between.
I think it was a reminiscent. Oh yeah, sorry. Actually, I forgot. Yeah, there's a feature that we're going to make in the website. If you hover the extreme parts of each one of those columns, the right column or the left column, you will be able to hide them. So pretty much that will maximize the main content, because I don't know, maybe you would just want to focus on reading the content, and then you can just hide those sections. This will be available pretty much in all the pages that follow this layout, on the learn pages, on the about pages. I'm not sure if the blog, because I think the blog design is different. But yeah, sorry. But that was a really nice shout out. I would have completely forgotten about this.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, so I think Hayden didn't make the design actually here, but just visualize the reading mode as if you click on those buttons here, it will just hide those columns, and the main content will just like take out the width that, are usually taken by these columns. Yeah. I think one of the notorious changes on the new website design is download page. Probably the one that we will see the most of comments. I'm particularly excited about this because the new design of the download page is more tailored to individual people's needs. So, for example, suppose you want to install Node.js on a package manager or pre-built installer, or just get a source code. You have specific tabs that allow you to go there, and we would detect the user environment. By default, we will always show the LTS as selected because you always want to recommend by default the LTS version, but you will see your OS pre-selected on, for example, the package manager page. And then on the pre-built installer, you will also have your architecture pre-selected. And then pretty much, once, have the 3 options selected, you will be able to download, click the download button. Yes, Richard?
Yeah, so I think this has come up in a separate discussion about package manager installs. But the reason that the current website keeps them separate is that we, as a project, don't control the package managers at all. A lot of people install via, say, the node source packages, but again, that's that's maintained by the node source folks and not by us. So the reason that the pre-built installers or the tarballs are prominent on the existing downloads page is because those are the ones that we actually support within our community. Now, it might be easier for people to install via package managers, but the problem there is that if anything goes wrong there, we cannot really
provide support.
The way that design is at the moment, if I was reading that left to right, that's kind of putting the package manager stuff front and center and prominent. Whereas we would probably want to either not even have it there or somehow indicate that it's a third-party way of installing Node that isn't really if you have a problem using that, then you have to go to them and not one of the repositories under the Node.js organization.
Gotcha.
We won't help you.
And I think we're even like completely missing the targ zips here.
Oh no, we have them.
But where would you get them from? Like, they're not a package manager, they're not a pre-built installer, and they're not source code. So,
well, for Linux you have the tar xz, but in source code there will be source code.
But like, so for the choices on the side are package manager. If you go back to the other one, yeah. So the package manager, pre-built installer, like neither of those are the targ zips.
Yes.
Like, so
it
where
would be the source code one actually. It would not be, so source code tab is not actually downloading the zip from GitHub, it's actually downloading the targzs.
Yeah, but they're not source code either.
Yeah, Michael's point is that we have a source tarball, but we also have tarballs for binaries that you just unpack and run. So,
but wait, those are the tar xzs, right? That's a pre-built installer.
No. We have 2 sets of tar xzs. One is per platform, and then we've got one that's source code, but that doesn't have any platform parts to the file names.
And they're not installers. Like, we have installers for Windows and Mac OS. We don't have installers for Linux. And
okay, sorry, what about better wording the pre-built binaries?
We're halfway through the meeting. If we're gonna get to anything else on the agenda, we can maybe discuss this in a
that one's the main.
Yeah, I feel that this is important, but first addressing package manager, I think we can of course highlight first the other tabs, and if people go to the package manager tab, we can definitely highlight, hey, package managers are not endorsed by the Node.js project, they're just an easy way for you of installing Node.js. We can see the wording and etc. on the issue. You can also leave a comment on the Figma itself, and we can keep this asynchronous to not take meeting time. But Tobias, you want to say something?
Yeah, just to add to what Richard already said, that as much as it is like Windows, I know that on Windows, if you open the Node website right now, you can download the installer with a single click. And I assume with the new website, it's going to be instructions to use Chocolatey. And we don't officially support Chocolatey, but what happens is, if you use the official installer, is if you want to install Python or Visual Studio as the build tools, it will use Chocolatey. And we've gotten a ton of negative feedback for that. It's an ongoing discussion. most people, many people just strongly dislike chocolatey. So putting that on the front page as like the recommended way to install Node on Windows instead of a single click to download the installer, which we officially support, seems like a step back.
I see. That's completely fine by me. So there are then at least 3 editorial changes that must be done. The first one in home, well, as you can see, the right thing literally shows how to install with package managers. So we won't need to either redesign this to just buttons to download with the installers or something else. Now we'll keep that on track. And always on the download page, highlight more preview installer as default instead of package manager. And in the package manager tab, give us caveats regarding that we don't give endorsement and etc. Would those be a good enough as CTAs? On your opinion, Tobias and Richard?
From what I see so far, probably. I can't give you a definite answer yet, but it sounds like the right idea.
Gotcha. Yeah, regarding source code, so I believe that this is just a phrasing issue because the intent on this tab was to download the tar.gzs, but phrasing is very important. So if anybody can on the Figmas or in the issue comment about a better phrasing for this, that'd be better. Because I feel that if they want to actually download the source code, they can just click the GitHub button on the top.
But yeah, I mean, if that's meant to be the tar.gzips, it doesn't have enough buttons, right? Like it doesn't let you choose platform, the architecture. Like we have tar.gzips for Linux, Mac. I think there's probably even one for Windows. There's ARM.
Just to interrupt, because I feel like this was a misunderstanding earlier. The tar xzs are also provided as tar.gzips. So there's 2 sets of files with different file endings, different compressions.
Correct. Yeah, we have the. Yeah, I see. Okay, one question then, because this code always, instead of having a dedicated tab, it could follow the same layout that we have already on node.js.org, which is, a table, right? So would it make sense that because we have the other tab, this to be an all download options, or is this a regression on your opinion in terms of design perspective? Would you rather have this table being rendered on all download options, or replace the source code tab with an actual table without download options, as we see, for example, here?
I think adding another tab, which was pre-built binaries that has this table.
Okay, so have a separation of pre-built installer and pre-built binaries, right?
Yeah, that would be like, if you want the installer, you can get that on Windows and Mac OS, and they could be listed there. Then pre-built binaries would be like all the binaries, and then the source code is a different thing. So like there's one of those. So
I feel this conversation needs to happen either on Figma or on an issue, because I don't think we'll be able to solve it in this meeting.
Yeah, that's fine. Just want to get a very sense of direction so I can already forward that. Okay.
And the whole question about how prominent the package manager tab has to be, I think that needs discussion, maybe amongst the project, because Jeffrey makes good points, but equally, there is the whole historical what is and isn't supported by the community.
Yep.
Gotcha. There's another introduction on the download designs, which is once you click the release notes button, it will actually open this new model. The idea behind this model is to fix the issues that sometimes when all release notes for a specific major version become too big, GitHub Markdown renderer will just not render the file, right? And the idea here is that we can render this here, but instead the specifics for that minor version, for each version that you rendering. So the idea is to render the changelog here, the release notes for that version, and also all the Git committers, that made this version possible, with a CTA to start contributing. The idea behind here is to showcase that people are behind this, and they were the ones that made this possible, and that you can also become part of this. Richard?
Yeah, just a quick question. Is this actually a rendering of from the changelogs then, rather than the release blog posts?
Yeah, it's a render from the changelog. There's also a link to the
that
release blog post here. If you click, it's the second one. So the first one is to open that module. The second one would redirect you to the release blog post of that release.
Next release. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, yeah, that's confusing. That should just be okay. That should just be okay.
Yeah.
I will add on the Figma comment for that.
Yeah.
Cool. And this is the mobile version, which is pretty much the same design. You can also check on Figma. Finally, we have blog. So blog is pretty much blog. So we are designing a few generic thumbnails for the categories of the blogs. For example, you will have one sort of thumbnail for, announcements or for releases, etc., similar to what the ESLint website did. Also, the designer that is doing this is the same designer of the ESLint website and also doing the OpenJS website refreshes. Yeah, and then just really asking anybody has any concern about this design.
I'm just a bit surprised. I don't have a concern. I'm just a bit surprised to see like these media. I don't know what the design is called, but having pictures above each post that essentially just show the same graphic with a bit of text on it. Is the plan to replace those with actual graphics, or is this how it's supposed to be?
So those were pre-generated OG images, which are OG images that can be served through social medias. You will be allowed to add a custom image, but it's just because that thumbnail that you see there is actually the thumbnail that if you share this on Twitter, X, whatever, will be what is being rendered.
That makes sense, but does it have to be visible in the UI for that to happen?
Not really. I think you can. I can add a comment there, or if you can also, if you want to start a discussion. Or
I'm not necessarily against it. I'm just surprised to see these very repetitive graphics there.
It does use a lot of real estate.
Yeah, the idea, if I recall, was to. Oh, he removed it. Okay. Wow. On other, there was a thing with all these things, but anyways, we can definitely revisit this even more because the image takes a lot of place and it's just a repetition, as you can see. I can agree with that. Definitely something we can tackle. But this is pretty much design of a blog post. You have the metadata on the right, the content on the middle, and then actions for getting to the previous or next blog post of the same category in terms of time. Sorry if I'm rushing, just trying to be kind of, time sensitive here. This is how it would look on mobile. Yeah. Then finally, the final things that I wanted to address is just some of the components that we have on website. So this is how the language picker would look like. Another thing that we decided, but is not updated across other designs, is that instead of having a search icon, we already have a search bar being rendered, which is easier for people to already start typing. And this is how it looks when you type and when you have results and when you don't have results. And also the other minor things you can definitely just check on Figma. I think they're not relevant enough to just be brought here. And then we have the design system tab, which is all the components that we're going to implement, and then just some generic assets. This is not worth covering now because this is not going to be implemented and this is just a mock, but this is part of the API metadata proposal where we want to also redesign the docs. Docs would still be a standalone application. They're not part of the node.js website, but the idea is that, well, generate the docs, they would follow the same design system, So pretty much we want to transform the website repository in a monorepo and have a separate package just for all these design components that then can be reused, for example, on the tooling for the APIs. So we can always refresh the design of the APIs. But technically speaking, there are two different websites. They're not connected, neither built together. If you have questions about what each one of those things are, feel free to comment in the Figma.
So what would the docs look like today? Like just a quick, like, so you're saying that today, if we, with that website redesign, the docs would still look like they do, like when you click on there, it'll still look like this to start with. That's yeah. Okay. Understood. Thanks.
And once we have the new package with all the components, we can, asynchronously redesign the docs. The idea here is that we can achieve this redesign without actually changing, the metadata of the docs, because we created a tooling that can actually generate the kind of metadata that we need to generate the artifacts that we have here. But it's something that will probably or very definitely happen only after we finish the redesign of the main website, so we can move towards the API design. But it's definitely a nice refresh, I think. But feel free to also comment here your questions and etc. If there's anything you just want to quickly comment, feel free. But I know that I'm kind of running out of time. Okay. Oh, I said the chat is commenting a lot of things. Oh, boy. Is there anything that I should read from chat? Because a lot of stuff.
No, I think we can just add a comment to the issue if necessary. I think that's all.
I think overall it looks really, really nice. There are a lot of comments, but it looks much better.
Yeah, I hope you'll not that I want you to enjoy this layout. The idea here is that we do something that, of course, the community loves and that you folks also love, to, of course, address the changes. But I'm honestly excited for this. I think that now that we, improved and, redone the whole infrastructure of the website, doing this is very feasible. And a lot of things are just a final comment of my side. Usually on socials, we get a lot of people talking about, the design of the website or API designs or search feature or et cetera, and I'm really excited to make this happen. Yeah, cool. As I mentioned, any comments? Are we already, some of the comments that are in my head already talk directly to Hayden, and also create comments on the Figmas if you folks haven't already. And yeah, thank you for having me. I'm sorry for consuming 80% of the meeting time. I'm sorry for that.
No, that's good. I expected it would take a good chunk of the time. So thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you all again for having me. Stay safe and see you next time.
Great, thanks. Okay, now we'll move back to the other items on the agenda. The first one is ESM, import meta dir name and import meta file name. I don't know, Jeffrey, if there's an update you want to give or discussion there.
So I opened the proposal on Winter.js and no one's replied to it. So I just don't know what to do with this. I guess James isn't here. Is anyone else on Winter.js?
Officially I am, but I haven't been active in a while. I think maybe if you know a stakeholder, maybe ping them again on the issue. Otherwise, there's no harm in waiting another week.
I've pinged both Bun and Dino several times. So if you want to give it a shot, maybe they'll respond to you. I think Dino is basically like, yeah, we're not doing this, and they're out. That's what they said earlier before we wrote the proposal. Bun was like happy to land dir name, but or at least Jared personally objected to file name. And I just haven't been able to get any type of discussion of like, okay, can we talk about this or whatnot? It's just been unreachable. So I don't know what Winter.js' policy is, like, if they meet and, like, I mean, technically this proposal has no objections, so it could just land at the next winter CG meeting. I don't know. Maybe we'll just see if that's what happens. But I don't know.
Does it conflict with what Bun has already done, or is it aligned with what they've already done, or?
Yes, it could. It arguably could conflict. Dirname is a direct match. They implemented file name as import.meta.path. Jared thinks that file name is a poor choice of name because it describes the entire absolute path and not just the file name, which, you know, he's right, but __ file name has been around for 13 years now. And so, you know, it's like that ship has sailed.
Oh, but does it, I mean, maybe that we can take that offside. Like, I'm just wondering, like, people are going to migrate. They have to write new code or change their code anyway. Like, does telling them to change file name to path make that big a difference?
Well, path almost feels like it should be a namespace, like path dot something, you know, and using it to be a string like precludes that potential option in the future. No, it's not that big a deal. Like, if we wanted to migrate to path, we could, if like they were really set on it. But I mean, I think it's more of like a UX question, like which one makes more sense to users. I think like there's so much history in server-side JavaScript with like __ file name that, like, you know, I think there's a lot of value in preserving that familiarity. Like, if you look at the node PR, no one suggested renaming these things. Like, they wanted to, you know, they wanted to keep the same names to make it really obvious that this is what they meant. I mean, the other thing is that everything else on import meta is going to be URL based, because that's like ES modules in general are URL based. So path has meaning in URL. Like, you could have there's, if you do new URL, there's like new URL dot path name is one of the properties of a URL object. So it's up for debate. Like, I don't think it's a slam dunk. Like their idea is better. That's why I put up the proposal, just kind of preserving what we thought was best. But it's sort of like, if no one's even going to engage, then it's like we're not going to be able to kind of reach consensus. So I also don't want us to land without, you know, getting something approved by winter CG.
Yeah, that makes sense. And if I remember correctly, there was also no consensus yet on whether that property should exist when the file is not actually loaded from a file URL. I believe some people were proponents of also having a path if it's loaded from an HTTP URL or so.
I think for technical reasons, that just can't make sense. Like the definition of these properties is that they're like file paths.
I agree with that. It's just that I believe some people in the winter CG issue have been proposing that their property should exist if it's a non-file URL, and that would be important to clarify beforehand.
I think someone asked if it was possible, but I don't think anyone was like proposing that it should exist. I mean, that could also be.
I'll have to look it up.
I don't know.
We can discuss that later.
I'll look at the. I thought I resolved all the notes on the proposal, but I can look again.
So I guess it's at what point do we? Your question is, at what point do we just decide we're not going to get feedback and like we did our best?
I mean, right? I feel like at the very least we need to wait until the next winter CG meeting, which I think is in early September. So I don't think we're doing anything before then. I have a feeling like if nobody does anything before that meeting's going to happen, and they're going to be like, maybe there's no one from Dino and Bun represented in that meeting, and then they're going to be like, yeah, we can't do anything on this until we hear back from those guys, and then it just waits another month. So if anyone has any contacts there and they can poke them and be like, hey, come on, we really need your input on this. In Dino's case, they've said they don't want to add this because they don't want to encourage using paths in general, that like their system is extremely URL based, which is fair. I kind of want their input in the sense of, if they were to change their minds at some point in the future, like they did with supporting NPM packages and many other things,
right.
this would be how they would change their mind. Like if they decide to support this in the future, these are the names of the things, and this is the definition of how they would behave, so that like if they decide to join the standard, they're okay with this being the standard. Like they're welcome to have input in it, even if they don't intend to implement it themselves. So if you know anyone from Dino, that would be the message to send. And then Bun, all we got was like kind of one flippant comment from Jared saying like, yeah, we can create he has import.meta.dir. And he was like, yeah, we can create an alias import.meta.dir name to alias to import.meta.dir, but I don't like import.meta file name. It's a bad name, and we have import.meta.path. And like that was it. So if anyone knows anyone else at Bun or a better way to reach Jared, I've reached out to him several times. He did reply once on Twitter, but then I couldn't really get him to engage.
So that's a comment on the proposal?
That's a comment on the issue that Mateo opened that like preceded the proposal.
Right, okay.
The other question we have to solve as the TSC is whether additions to import.meta are considered semver major or semver minor. I don't know if we want to talk about that now with only a few minutes left, but that's the
think
other
it would-
thing on the agenda.
Is there an issue to discuss that in particular, or?
I think
Like,
there was whatever I think I tagged TSC agenda with it. I think someone created yet another proposal of adding something to import.meta. It wasn't these two. I forget what it is right now. Oh, resolve URL, like with URL being capitalized. And it was sort of like it was import.meta.node.resolve URL. And I think I responded with like, well, technically import.meta.node isn't like a blessed thing yet. Like we've thrown it around as an idea, but you know, that deserves its own proposal to WinterCG, that we're going to create these like namespaces on import.meta. And then I assume that WinterCG would approve that, but we have to go through the process. And then assuming that all happens, then that raises the next question of like, can any contributor just like drop something in there without discussion? Because like it could become a free for all.
That seems, I
if
was just
things are
asking,
added there, should it be a semver major or semver minor change? You know, all these things. It's a lot like adding globals, but perhaps not as dangerous as adding globals. So maybe it could be minor.
I was just thinking like that discussion though might be a separate issue from the adding the dir name and file name, right? Like it's kind of independent. So I don't know. If we had a separate issue, we could have that discussion on that topic asynchronously in there.
The only impact of that is if we do decide it's semver major, then we don't have much time to add anything for node 21. We're talking about going into September and then node 21 is going out in October. That's not a lot of time if we're waiting for feedback from people outside the project. That is assuming it would have to be semver major. If it was minor, then we can.
I can open an issue. I can open an issue specifically about the semver major question. I think that was I think James was the one suggesting that the last meeting. I think it was more. I think it's a little. There's a good the argument for it being semver minor is that no one can polyfill import.meta. Like, I mean, I guess you can through like the loaders API, but it's not like you can just create a polyfill like global this.foo and then it's like polyfilled for a missing, global thing. And then if we add it, it might break people. Well, I don't know. Or maybe you could say that doing it via loaders API is the equivalent to that. I don't know. But that's the argument for it being semver major. I think most people were thinking that this was probably semver minor, in which case it's a little less drastic. The dir name and file name thing, whether it's major or minor is like a secondary concern. Like if WinterCG meets and approves the proposal, great. We have permission to just add these things, which would be fabulous. And then we have to decide, okay, well, do we add them as a major addition? And so it came up, but it was sort of like, one thing at a time. Like we can, we're already blocked on something else, so we can deal with that other question later.
I think we should move on since we've got a few other issues, but if you can open that other issue, we can have the discussion there. And I guess we leave the issue on the agenda in terms of the dir name and file name until, like you said, at least the next meeting, and we can, if anybody can help pull in the other teams, great. If not, we'll see what happens there. And like, I think in the end, it's like, you know, we're trying to do the right thing by getting approval, but it's not like we need permission of Winter CG. We want that if we can. So Benjamin, go ahead.
Sorry, I meant to react positively. I completely agree. We want
Okay.
like to collaborate with them in good faith, but eventually we can decide on our own APIs without their permission.
I would also say though that this is not an urgent thing to add. Like people have done without this for years. You can work around it with like 2 lines of code. So, you know, it's not like any users are blocked by this not existing. So we can afford to take the time to let this play out.
I agree with that. Like it's been a gap for a long time, so we shouldn't rush. But okay, so I think we've got the next steps on those two. Just want to make sure we cover the remaining issues and what we've got less. We already talked about the open nomination for the OpenJS CPC meetings. We have the Collabora meeting before NodeConf EU. I think we had a discussion of that last time, and the discussion was like, it's just too late. Anything that does happen will happen as part of the conference itself. So there may be some workshop time where we could have a few sessions, but I think we could remove this from the agenda because that was the main question. Does anybody think we should leave it on the agenda? Okay, I'll remove it from the agenda. As they discussed, agreed last time, removing from agenda. The next one is remaining OSSF funding. I think that one too, if we look at it, is, you know, there was a discussion next time. Raphael kind of outlined the proposal and he was looking for feedback to see if anybody had concern or anything like that. But I think the discussion of like next steps and how to progress is happening in that issue. So I'd also think we could take that off the agenda unless anybody thinks we should keep it on there. Okay, I'm going to just do that. Remove it from the agenda so we don't get that again next week. The enable GitHub code spaces for Node.js, I think same thing. That was discussed and we agreed to move forward, and I saw some issues somewhere else, so I probably should have just removed it last time. And move agenda. That takes us to expose WebSock and Node bundled 22.117. I don't know if anybody has any context and wants to jump in on that one.
I think that's going to be difficult without Matteo present.
Right. I would agree. I'm just seeing who added it to the agenda.
Also Matteo.
Okay, so I guess, yeah, I'd agree. Let's leave it on the agenda until we have a Matteo. And I think if I haven't missed anything, that takes us to the end.
I mean, well, maybe we don't have time to discuss it. The WebSocket thing was just, are we going to allow a global WebSocket? Well, a WebSocket global, like we have a fetch global. And I think it was just, no one seemed to be opposed to it in the issue. It was more like, is anyone in the TSC opposed to this? That was kind of it. I think in the issue, I had suggested just adding it behind a flag because of our policy, it would be semver major otherwise. But if you put it behind an experimental flag, then we could land it now and backport it. So, I mean, can we say maybe that they're free to go forward with that? And then, you know.
I think I'd need to better understand, like, is that actually then making that available in the API, or is it, what is it actually adding?
It's a global, like globalist.websocket, similar to globalist.fetch.
I believe I believe
Go
the
ahead.
main concern is that the global would be standard compliant, but it would only be a WebSocket client, and most people would expect that if Node serves a WebSocket client, it also provides a WebSocket server. And then the API, and also the API that is standard compliant, doesn't necessarily fulfill the needs of server applications. There's no way to specify custom headers. There's no way to read response headers. There's a bunch of features that people would like in a Node application that's not provided by that class.
Yeah, but I think other server-side runtimes have added the WebSocket client that's equivalent to the browser WebSocket client. Like, yeah, it can't function as a server, but I think the idea that people are expecting the global to function as a server is, I think potentially misguided. Like, we can easily add yet another API that people import off something, import WebSocket server from Node HTTP or whatever. And then that fulfills that need. I don't think that needs to be a blocker for us aligning with everybody else in shipping the WebSocket global. I think also those arguments were made like years ago before we added fetch. So I think that there's kind of been a change in thinking about these types of things that, it's more important to have these compatible APIs, even if they're.
It was like 8 months ago that
Well, I mean, the beginnings of this discussion about WebSocket.
No, for sure. Just those specific concerns that the API is not suitable for Node were made a few months ago.
I mean, personally, I've used WebSocket client in Node many, many times to just get data the same way I would use fetch. So I think it's very useful regardless of whether or not it's also a server. I would never, that didn't occur to me.
I think we are over time. So I would say let's leave it on the agenda till next time when Mateo's here, and between now and then, I guess more discussion could go on async in the meeting in the issue. If that's okay, that we'll skip strategic mission initiatives since we're a few minutes over. Is there any other topics that we should discuss before we close out? Okay, well, thank you for everybody for taking the time, and those who are watching on the YouTube channel. We will see everybody in GitHub next time. Thanks. Bye.